Okay, hello everybody, and hi Louisa. Today we're going to have a chat about an awakening process. Not that I really like to call it awakening, but the awakening process and the role of intuition that played in your journey up to now. So I'll just briefly introduce you and then we can get started. Okay, so are you good? Everything is good?
Yeah, thanks for having me on your show. Thanks for asking me.
You're welcome.
I'm very hot in here because we're both in Portugal, aren't we? So I didn't realize how warm it was all of a sudden. Excuse me.
I did actually. I was over your way today to go and see something, and I nearly called you and said, should we do it jointly together?
Oh my God.
But I only had about an hour, so I didn't know if you'd have time, but I thought maybe it was a good idea. So let's just introduce you. So the lovely lady I'm talking to today is Louisa Munson, and we met, when did we meet? Was it 2001, 21?
I don't know, actually.
I think it was around the COVID period that we met. And Louisa moved to a place near me in Portugal, and we met through a mutual friend. From the moment I met you, I've already felt like I knew you, and that we'd probably in some capacity shared a life before in some way. So Louisa has a YouTube channel and a website called Feel Good Astrology, right? And she's a master astrologer and also a hypnotherapist. Yeah, and also a great motivator, I think. And you, with your husband Carl, also work on the Good Morning, or are the creator of Good Morning Portugal, right? Good Morning Portugal. Which has loads of good resources and insights into being an expat and living in Portugal.
Yeah.
But what I really wanted to talk to you about today, like I said as we started, was about your journey to how you come to the point that you're in now, and how the process of kind of awakening happened for you. And a theme that I get when I'm talking to people is quite often this process started long before COVID. And when people look back and reflect on their lives, they can see that there were stages of their lives that kind of meant that at this time you kind of had a bit of an understanding, or at least a deep inner knowing that what was going on wasn't quite what we were being told. So where did this kind of process start for you? Has it been a lifelong thing?
Yeah, I think my parents would say I've always been difficult and rebellious from word go. So I think they would always say that. I think I always felt like a imposter in my family. So like, I mean, it's not a really like big thing, but growing up, people used to say, whose are you? You don't look anything like your dad, and you don't look like your mum. And I had red hair and blue eyes, which is like completely different coloring to the rest of my family. And there was always this question, and I used to think I was adopted, which is crazy because now when you see me with my parents, I've really aged in the same way as they have. But just having something like that from word go is a little bit odd. But I always seem to do everything differently, and my difference was pointed out a lot. I don't know if it was a bit of discomfort on my lovely parents' part. I was always asking questions and just doing things a little bit differently. And so, you know, like we all have a story or a reputation that people carry for us. My mum and dad's a story about me, I think the one that I seemed to tune into was that I was always just doing things differently. I was always a bit odd, like I was the left-handed one in a family of four, you know, and just there's always something about me that was inconvenient. And you know, when I went to school, I was always a bit different. Like I was a bit dreamy, so nobody and like from an early age I would feel things and say, oh, I felt this, it feels like knives are being thrown towards me, when I was about 2 or 3, and I was able to articulate how I was feeling. But my mum and dad couldn't work out what was going on, and said, don't believe it. There aren't any knives here, what you're talking about. But I would hear things and see things and feel things. And so I think it was viewed with like that sort of difference was viewed with a little bit of, discomfort. Just like my parents didn't quite know how to read me. And then I had a very sort of normal and beautiful and compliant younger sister.
Which where are you in the four?
I'm the first. You know, I'm like, we're a family of 4 and I'm the eldest daughter.
Oh, okay. And you have a younger sister.
Yeah. And so, you know, my sister came in and she's like a card carrying, like she carried the family story, you know, the family tradition, and I sort of stuck out like a sore thumb. And, you know, I grew up in a very sort of like working class area on the edge of a big council estate. And, you know, at the school I went to, I was always on the edge of the playground, and people would come to me if they had fallen out with somebody, you know, so people are all in their gangs and stuff, and I'd be watching on. And then all of a sudden, when somebody was heartbroken or upset, they'd come over and get a bit of comfort from me, and then they'd soon leave me a bit later. But that's just how I rolled. I never wanted to get involved in any of the big gangs. And like when I went to Girl Guides and things like that, that I never wanted to do, and went to, what was it called? Like Sunday, you know, where the Girl Guides go to church and things like that. Every time I was pulled into anything that had any kind of group think, I just felt really repulsed, and like I wanted to be anywhere but there. And so, yeah, I think I just couldn't wait to grow up and be able to determine my own life. And, you know, when I was 11, I went to a grammar school, and I was the only kid from my school, and the only girl that went to a grammar school from my area. And so suddenly this like little working class girl was in a school with, you know, middle class children, many of whom had private education and stuff. So again, I've always felt like an outsider, and I probably, to be fair, enjoyed it as well. You know, I kind of made myself more special by sitting on the outside. But of course, when you're on the outside, you get to see what's really going on.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because obviously as a young child, I think all children have the ability to feel, but not all children have the ability to articulate what you think might be going wrong. Yeah. And I also have found that through this process, and those that seem to understand what was going on quite early are people that had quite challenging upbringings, not necessarily trauma or anything like that, but just difficult situations where they didn't always feel like where they could fit in. Yeah. And it's almost like what you're explaining, you were already outside of the kind of construct that people build around us, and you were already an observer, you know, you were already watching it. So when it came to this time of, you were able to step back again, be that person on the outside and wait and absorb what you believe that you're observing, and come to decisions like that. But there definitely seems to be a theme that people, those that were as children, felt a bit different, or felt like they weren't quite, you know, like everybody else. And that can be very isolating, but like you, at the same time, it can also be quite empowering. So it sounds like from quite an early age, you already took it as a gift, in a sense, or not?
Yeah, I did take some pride in it, for sure. You know, and like when I was at grammar school, I chose all of the most rebellious things I could, you know, to do. I got suspended twice.
Did you?
And sent home from school 3 times. And I also did the things that, you know, the creators did, like art and design, and I did religion and philosophy, and didn't want to do any of the things that the school was famous for or well known for. That they, you know, I was always kind of trying to stick my fingers up to the system of school in some way. But there was also a very compliant part of me that wanted to be the best and do well and not embarrass my parents. It's interesting what you were saying, because when you were sort of like feeding back what I'd fed to you, I heard this sense of orphan. You know, I always felt like an orphan, even though I've got a loving family. And sure, you know, my mum and dad did absolutely they absolutely did the best that they could, and I still felt like I didn't belong. And there were times, I now remember, you've sort of jogged my memory. As a kid, I used to look at the world and I used to feel like, what am I doing here? This isn't for me. And I had absolutely I totally forgotten that memory, or that series of memories. But I used to walk around and feel like, why am I here? This is not my time. This is not my place. And a real sort of feeling of sadness and longing to be somewhere else. And this sense of, oh my God, I'm really connected. You know how people talk about the fall from grace, you know, where you might have been in this beautiful environment of just love, and then you just feel the absolute crushing weight of despair because you're here. And for a lot of people, being on planet Earth, it feels really cool, doesn't it? You know, people love being here. And yet for me, being here for a lot of my life, until I learned to kind of consciously change it or be able to work with it and have a sense of my own power, for a lot of it, I felt really, I think it's a really harsh place.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's brutal, right? It's life is brutal, especially in the constructs that we live now, you know, with having to fit into all these boxes. For those people that don't feel like they have to fit in, or they don't want to fit in, those boxes are very confining, aren't they? Yeah. And it's interesting what you said as well about the period in time and about being here, because Seb that I spoke to yesterday, he said that he'd always felt that he was either born 100 years too early or 100 years too late. Yeah. But that now he realizes that he's in the place exactly where he was meant to be. Yeah, same here. To understand and to work through and to try and kind of be a beacon of light to other people, to see through this change that I think we are going through. And when all of this started, I kind of thought that it was going to be very rapid. I thought that something would happen that would be a massive, like huge, shocking thing that happened. And, you know, billions of people would wake up collectively. But now I realize that that can't happen, because the waking up period that people have is usually quite painful, or it involves a lot of working through your own shadows at the same time as kind of coming to terms with what is going on around us. The other thing I wanted to pick up on about what you just said was about they're always the same stories seem to be that you felt that even within your family, you almost felt like you didn't quite fit in with their energy. But also my understanding now of having children is that your children are there to show you. So you were there to show your parents a different side. And have they started to accept like your career process and where you now are?
Well, it's a funny one, because my career has been quite eclectic, let's say. I opted not to go to university, though did study astrology from the age of 19, which my mum and dad didn't sponsor me for, but my grandmother did. She's like my bright star, my grandma. She always saw me as I thought I really was, you know.
On your mother's side or on your side?
Yeah, my mum's, and she was a migrant, funnily enough. So, you know, we've also, like, apart from like working class and going to like middle class school, we also had like themes, which so many people have, themes of migrancy and moving, and so, you know, I think this sort of idea of orphans is probably more relevant we realize. But sorry, what was that question? I'm all of a tiver.
Oh, sorry, am I pressing some nerves?
No, it's great. Do you know what? There is something going on today. I'm not entirely sure what's going on.
It is hot. I feel like it's hot.
I feel hot, but I feel like there's something kind of mystical going on today.
Oh, dear. What day is it? It's the 13th, isn't it? Yeah.
But just refocus me for a sec.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we were talking about, have your parents now kind of accepted your differences, and that they,
it's an interesting one. Like, when I was about 11, I started to study tarot, astrology, palmistry, because I wanted something that I could look at to explain the feelings and knowings that I had about things.
How did you get introduced to that at 11? Because we didn't have the internet then, so
we didn't, but we did have bookshops, and there was a secondhand bookshop down the road. And like, what does most 11-year-olds do when they get their first pocket money? I think most of them spend it on sweets and clothes, but I had my eye on this. I just love bookshops, and so I walked down to the secondhand bookshop, and there was this compendium of like understanding yourself, and that was my big thing. Sorry about the dogs barking in the background.
That's okay, mine will probably start in a minute.
It's Portugal, isn't it? Oh yeah, that compendium. I guess I wanted to try and find out, who am I, why am I here, and so that started me off. And then when I was 16, I was diagnosed with glandular fever, and I was really feverish for a few days, of in and out. And during that time, I heard a voice in my head, get a pen, get a piece of paper. And I started automatic writing, and I wrote a whole folder full of poems, like one after the other. And then I started to just naturally feel a lot of mediumship. And so, my parents at the time, they started to think, this is a bit more real. And then I amongst other things, lived in France for 5 years. And while I was away, my mum got cancer, and she was a little bit scared of dying, as most people are. And they went to oh crikey, what's it called? A spiritualist church. And then they met this healer that I'd been working with and practicing my mediumship with. And so they started to get into it. They started to learn a little bit about it, and they both became hands-on healers.
Wow.
So they did start to bring some of that into their lives. And my dad still offers healing once a week.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, they're really good people. And at the start of COVID, before that, I would say one big, because you were asking, when did my eyes get really opened? I would say that was about 13 years ago when I went to live in Bali for a short while. And I met, I was following clues, as we often do. So I'd had a reading in my early 30s when I was saying, oh, when am I going to meet the love of my life? And this guy said, it's not going to be until you're at least 36, which was quite a few years. And he said, and you need to go to the other side of the world, and the person you meet will be from 2 different cultures, and he will be this, that, and the other. And it just so happened that I went to live in Bali, and while I was there, I met this guy, and he fitted some of this criteria, and I was hanging out with him, and he started telling me about other types of energies that we share this planet or plane with. And he started telling me about stuff that I'd always suspected. And at the same time, I met my very good friend, Rick Purcell, who is a coach out of Bali. And he used to have these wonderful evenings in his beautiful shop, which was very much like a shop you and I would love. It had crystals and books and all sorts of things in. But once a week, he would have a film night, and he would put on a film like Loose Change, the story of 9/11. And a load of people would come, and we would watch a movie, and we'd have a discussion and healing after. And it was a really, really powerful time. Within about 6 months, I had realized that what I'd always known about, like I'd always felt something wasn't quite right, but I couldn't put all the pieces together.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there was that dawning realization that everything I knew about my life was fake. And I was really lucky. I was in Bali when it happened.
Yeah.
I was away from.
Or is it luck, or is it you were meant to be?
Yeah. So I gave myself a good 9 months to just absorb the information. I was practicing astrology and also doing mediumship, and also doing some coaching sessions as well. And just took my time to review the information. But when I first heard it, I was just looking over my shoulder all the time, because I'd heard about all sorts of different races. And, I was living in a land full of geckos and lizards. You hear owls in the background, and all this like symbology was like, oh my goodness, am I in the right place? I was quite terrified. But
well, again, just to highlight that point, that's something that we talked about yesterday as well with
really?
Seb, was that it seems to be that when people have that moment, the first reaction is kind of fear or anger. And it takes a while to process that and to understand how you can try and come out the other side and still exist in the function that we're existing in now.
Yes.
And then, but the process is almost like a stages of bereavement, like it's denial, anger, guilt, and then finally at the end there's acceptance. And once there's acceptance, from what I can see, is that's when people can really start to help other people. And with what's happened with COVID, I think there was a big kick when there was lots of people that realized that something wasn't right from the beginning. And then there appears to have been waves as we've gone through, where there seems to be lots of people open and seeing what's going on, and then it comes back down again, and then each time the amplitude of the wave gets a little bit bigger. And that's what I'm seeing, definitely, just from my circle and the people that I interact with, and on social media and things like that. There seems to be a big shift, and for one person it might be I said this yesterday, like seeing the Queen at Prince Philip's funeral in a mask. That could have been a trigger for some people to kind of start the process. But for me, it felt like a big kick in my gut, the COVID thing. And I kind of, like you, our stories are so similar. And I had a imaginary friend when I was little. I used to talk to it all the time. And I was like you, I kind of had my head in the clouds until I was rudely shaken out of that when I had an accident when I was 11 and knocked my teeth out. I had quite a nasty accident. And after that, I went through quite a long period of what I now look back on and think that it was kind of dark then. It was like my innocence was kind of stolen away at that point, and things felt very heavy and dark. And probably around the same age as you, I was having lots of problems with tonsillitis.
Oh gosh.
And I had a lot of time off school, and I was very tired. And now looking back, I know that I had probably what would now be diagnosed as chronic fatigue. But I would come home from school and I'd fall asleep straight away on the sofa. My mum used to say, "Oh, you were always very sleepy. You were always tired." You know, I had energy. Like now, I always have energy. But then when I stop, I can just fall asleep like that. I'm still like that now. Okay, so after you'd done the Bali thing, and you went through that kind of shock process, what did you do that helped guide you through that process? Was it leaning on other people, or was it educating yourself more, or was it more traveling, or what grounded you?
Oh crikey. I don't know if I'm ever fully grounded. I think motherhood has helped that. So I will cut to that part of the story at some point. But you're right. I mean, I was in shock for quite a while, and looking over my shoulder every time I picked up my phone, which thankfully back then they were like bricks, and they weren't like smartphones. So it's not like it was spying on me or anything that I was aware of. But I was just thinking, oh my goodness, what can I trust? So it's like all of a sudden this trust, this level of trust that I had in the world, that the world was a fair place, that just dropped away. But something else came up for me, which was really, really powerful. And that was, it all makes sense now.
Yes.
Like this massive realization, it all makes sense. So for many years, I had, like after I left school, I went and lived in France for 5 years, met a guy from Manchester, and we set up a home, and we were in this relationship for 11 years, and he's a great guy, and we had a lovely friendship, and I was living very normally, you know. So yes, I'd studied astrology and I had this kind of unusual side to me, but I went straight into banking.
That doesn't seem to fit.
No, followed by insurance work. So, you know, I wanted a mortgage. I wanted to settle down. I wanted to get married and have kids and follow the narrative. And all of a sudden I felt this sense of acceptance coming from my parents. You were asking about jobs. When I was like after years of working corporate, I trained as a trainer and a facilitator, and I had my own business, and I used to go around to like Bank of America, Bank of New York, Cadbury's, loads of legal firms, and I would be delivering training at loads of money a day. And my parents were so proud of me. They were saying, "Oh, our daughter's got her own training company." They loved that. I don't hear them talk about me in those terms as an astrologer. I'll make that clear.
But isn't that interesting? Because I'm going to go to a conversation that I had with my partner, Louise, now. Yeah. And ages and ages ago, when we first started seeing each other, I was quite in awe with his talent. He's got an amazing talent with lots of different things. He plays drums, he surfs, he skateboards, he makes surfboards. He's very artistic. He's very creative. If you give him a pile of stuff, he could build things with his hands. And I remember him asking me, one of the first things he asked me was, "What talents do you have?" And I was like, well, I don't play an instrument, I don't sing, I'm not creative, particularly like with drawing and things like that. And I said, "But I help people." And he said, "That's not a talent." He said, "That's not a talent." But now he knows me, and he knows how I operate and how I live my life. He absolutely thinks that it most definitely is. It's not just a talent, it's a gift and it's a skill. Yes. So I guess, you know, your parents are obviously very proud of you. I mean, you're not just an astrologer and a hypnotherapist, but you also are raising 3 gorgeous beacons of the future. Oh, bless you. That's such an important job, isn't it? Right there, being a parent.
I mean, I've brought it up with them a few times. I've laughed about it and said, you know, because it was so much easier for them to be proud of me when I was following the narrative and looking like a really grounded, based, real person with a mortgage, a house, a nice car, and a good job. They loved that. And, you know, and and they are very proud of the choices I've made, and yet they don't understand them so much because I don't own a house. We drive a 22-year-old car that was about to be scrapped. And we homeschool our children, you know, so we are not really following the script. But crikey, there's so many things I want to pick up on, like the chronic fatigue, by the way. But yeah, so you're asking how did they come about? Like, did they start to believe? And so yeah, they started to believe in spirituality and stuff. But at the start of COVID, we'd heard about it a little bit before everyone in Portugal had heard about it, because Carl's got a daughter living in Italy and I've got a best friend living in China. And so I heard from them, I checked with them. And so we went into our own elective lockdown 2.5 weeks before it all went crazy around the world. And by that time, I'd already ordered in some kind of ultraviolet light to like kill any bugs, and I'd like ordered in this like full-on witch's brew of different potions and all sorts of different things, and got everything shipped in, loads of vitamin C.
Very similar to me. I had to do this, well, I didn't lock down, but I did the rest.
And my husband and I spoke about protocols before anything was on the TV. And I spoke to my mum and dad and I said, look, I heard this thing is coming and I haven't researched it. I don't know anything about it, but do yourself a favor and get home and stay home and get loads of food in and get money out the bank and make sure you got petrol in your car. And they were like, oh, we're on holiday, we're not going to do that, that's just made up. And you know, they continue to like socialize, and I was like, oh my god, my parents. But I thought, okay, anyway, a few weeks in, or maybe a month and a half into this pandemic that we were told about, I put in like these sort of visible physical bunny ears. I start to smell a rat, and you know, my mum and dad by that point are card carrying, no, we must be safe. And I was like, no, you can relax now. But so they'd learned to trust the spirit. But the panic of not fitting in with everybody else, there was so much really strong brainwashing going on during that time. There still is. And so I think that's played in. However, they did elect to get involved with a certain procedure. However, thereafter, they started to hear the message and they started to feel quite unwell in themselves. And then since elected to have their own approach to things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I had so many phone calls begging them to tune in and to look at different material and to just use discernment. I mean, I haven't really spoken to my sister much in the 3 years because her family went a completely different way to our family. And absolutely, you know, that's the way they wanted to manage it. And it feels like families were ripped apart. It's hard.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, everybody I speak to about it, those people that were trying to encourage others to see a different side of things. So like you, when I first heard about it, I had already watched Event 201. So I was kind of expecting something to happen. So when it happened, I was like, oh shit, this is it. This is it. And then I was reading all the medical journals and I wasn't watching the news. I wasn't really paying attention that much to the news. I was trying to understand how much of a pressure is this going to be on the health service. And from the off, obviously they weren't testing lots of people then, but the admission rate to hospital was 25% and the death rate was 5%. So I did the maths and I worked out that by kind of mid-January, the ITUs would be really struggling all over the world and that there'd be people dying in field hospitals because there was no ventilators. And I actually kind of believed that might be true. And I didn't know what the origin of COVID was or what was actually causing it, whether it was definitely a virus or if it was something else. But then after time, I did the same as you. I got loads of food in, I got cash out from the bank. I even bought masks. I bought N95 masks because the way I saw it, if people were really like 25% were going to have to go to hospital, we were in big trouble. That's what I thought. And then I started to look at the bed occupancy figures and things like that. And I was, hang on a minute, this doesn't reflect what you know they're telling us. So that's how the process I went through. And at first, not many people engaged with me about the numbers and about the severity. And like you, I bought lots of vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc, and I quercetin. I had everything there. And none of us got sick actually for 2 years during that period. And it was a very difficult time, especially for me as a healthcare professional, to be trying to tell people that something that was completely against what all the other people were saying on the news and everywhere else. It was for me, that was a big shake up of my sense of self, because people came to me for advice before, but the advice that I was giving about COVID, nobody wanted to know. Yes. Because it was in confliction with what else they were being told. And then by the time Boris was admitted to ITU, I knew that it was all just, oh, come on now, like this is just being ridiculous. And it was also very clear that they were going to start introducing things like the digital passport and the vaccine and all of those things. So in a sense, when we, and like you did, spoke to other people, what we did was we planted seeds, really. And some of them took a while to grow. Some of them haven't sprouted yet. And some of them probably never will. You know, there are some people that just don't want to know. And I think at this stage, I imagine that more people would be awake than are now. I thought it would be much faster. But I think that what's affecting those people from actually delving into their inner beliefs is that they bought it and they took the vaccine and they downloaded the Vax passport. They always wore a mask. They did exactly what they were told. And those people are the ones that are going to need a lot of help, I think, in the future, because that is a real mind mess, isn't it? Like when you're you've had your autonomy attacked, like your sense of self, and you've taken a medical treatment you probably didn't need, or might not be effective, or is not safe, and you've been lied to.
Isn't even actually right for the thing that it says it does. Might actually have other perks, or
exactly. And when I was talking yesterday to Seb, it was kind of like we have this shaking of ourselves, and then we regroup and ground ourselves again. But there's still a lot of stuff that we don't know whether is definitely true or not. And there's a big focus now, especially on social media, even with the alternative media, is that they put a huge focus on one thing and make it to be a massive problem. And everybody believes it's to be a massive problem. But when you walk out your door, and what you see in your reality is not what you're being told. So it's a bit like the Truman Show, isn't it? You know, I definitely felt that when at the beginning, like I was walking out in the street and I thought, well, I feel like I'm in an episode of the Truman Show. It's just very bizarre.
I absolutely agree with everything you said there. I mean, I was really grateful that I had no medical training, because that would have been the ultimate in absolute, like, I don't think I would have coped if I was in your position. I wouldn't have had the balls to, I don't know, maybe I would have done, but like to be somebody who has medical training and to see what's going on and to stand firm in that when everyone else is saying that's not true. I mean, you know, when I shared information, I got a standard, well, what do you know? You're an astrologer. What could you possibly know? You know, and I got loads of that, and I had to concede, well, yes, I don't have any medical training, so yeah, it's just my opinion, it's just an opinion piece. But I did have the same sense, I think, as many people did who are kind of way showers or who stand on the outside of things, and that is, I had this sense of responsibility, like I was meant to save people.
Yeah, me too.
And actually what this last few years has really taught me is that everybody's journey is sacred, and it's not our responsibility to do that. And so I mean, Facebook really stopped me from sharing a lot of things. I got shadowed. Yeah, I'm sure you did. You know, like my business, which was growing on there, was doing very well, and all of a sudden it was not seen, and my stuff doesn't get seen very well unless somebody is actually looking for it. And I don't know if that's translated into YouTube, but it does seem that some channels do very well and others just don't seem to do very well. But I think I've just, you know, my decision is just to live by my values and to share, but not to say this is how it is, because I'm really aware that even though I've got an alternative view, that might not be true as well. So I think my only stand that I have that feels really, really right is that I know nothing, which doesn't sound very powerful to people that you're trying to influence. You know, the only thing I know for sure is that I don't know everything and I don't know all the answers. And this is what my intuition is saying.
Yeah.
So really my message would only ever reach people who are able to tune in themselves.
Yeah, who are open to receive.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
So I just, you know, and I don't consider myself awakened, but I do consider that I'm on the journey and I always have been. And like, you know, when this COVID thing came up, like you were saying about the event 201, I thought, oh my God, this is it. This was the time that I was born for. I definitely had that feeling. And I was hoping something would happen very quickly. And all of a sudden, the whole infrastructure of the world would just like break down and then something would be born, birthed from it. But yeah, it's been very painful, in fact. And we've been gaslit. And friendships and lots of things that I valued have fallen apart. And there are some people that I know have been through some deep suffering. Up until this time, I hadn't heard about anyone dying suddenly for absolutely no obvious reasons. I'd never heard about that in my life. You might have done with your training. I'd heard of somebody having a heart attack. And, you know, so they were in the process of dying, you know, having a heart attack and in the process of dying where there was a window of opportunity where somebody could be saved or not. But I've not heard of people just, you know, unless they have some kind of heavy impact in a car crash. I've not heard of people that just drop dead. Never heard of that before. And yet in the last 3 years, I've heard of many cases. And in fact, I was speaking to a good friend just the other day who was out at an event, like a celebration event where you sit on a different table to other people to celebrate. And in the middle, you know, somebody had said how happy they were about their life and how they'd had a great life. And then they just dropped dead. And nobody was able to revive. Yeah, it was just there 1 minute, gone the next. And that I do get really angry that nobody's paying attention to that. But of course, loads of people are, but the media's not. And or lots of media isn't. You know, why isn't it being, you know, like I was looking up something from Substack about the amount of live births. In the last 18 months, it's gone down on an average of 10%. I think in Poland, it was something like 18% less live births.
Yeah, it's a big drop. But yesterday I saw on the Portuguese news that they said that actually there'd been more births in Portugal, which I thought was, I don't know if that's true because I didn't actually go and look at the data, but I was quite surprised. But going back to your kind of dying suddenly thing, yes, I'm aware that, you know, people do die suddenly. And I have, even as a nurse being off duty, I have had to try and resuscitate someone that died like that in front of me.
Really?
It was in a pub. I was in a pub and an old guy came in and every day used to come in, drink 2 pints and then bike home. He went in, ordered his pint and just like that. But that was, you know, 20 years ago or 25 years ago. And, you know, we often used to get, sorry?
But presumably he was old and was it seen as like
his
time or?
I don't know, because I don't know what his medical history was, but he'd cycled several miles to go to the, you know, so he was obviously of a reasonable kind of fitness and health. And I did sadly lose someone that I know last year she was in her 50s and she got out of the shower and she had a massive heart attack and died. And she wasn't vaccinated. She was actually very awake and she didn't really have any medical history that would have led you to believe that she would have been at risk. So, but I know what you mean. I'm hearing a lot more from friends of friends and not necessarily my direct circle, but in and around of people that have been found in bed or people that have been found in the shower or people dying on the street and things like that. So it definitely needs looking at, and they need to try and work out what is going on. And my view is that it's possibly a combination effect. It's not just the vaccine. There's something else that's happening. And whether that's to do with our skies or the celestial, you know, movement and what's going on in our solar system, I don't know. I don't know what it is, or the extra electromagnetic fields we have, or I'm not sure. But there does seem to be a bit of a combo effect going on. But also on the opposite side, I do know lots of people that have been vaccinated, who are seemingly okay, and they don't seem to have had any problems.
Yeah.
But then obviously we've heard about them sending out placebos.
Yeah.
So it's they've muddied the waters deliberately.
Yes. Yeah, they have.
And I think the lockdown was actually kind of like a pre-planned excuse of the extra deaths, because what the experts are saying is that people weren't able to get medical treatment, they were isolated, they were probably using substances more and not eating healthily, and all those things have contributed to more people dying. But I think it's a very convenient excuse, and it definitely needs to be examined. And they're still offering boosters to people, and with the flu and pneumonia vaccine at the same time and stuff like that. It's very reckless. At the very least, even if it's not more nefarious, it's massively negligent, and the whole kind of system needs a massive shake-up. Anyway, so I was going to go off into COVID bullshit, but I think
I would join you there.
yeah. Well, I wanted to explore a little bit more about when it was difficult. Yeah, what you did to ease that process. So obviously, did you look to your astrology more, or have you looked there for answers?
Oh, such good questions. I don't really know that I have the answers of what I've done to ease it, because I've been up and down, up and down, up and down. I mean, one thing I did do was I started interviewing exceptional people who were involved in health, coaching, spirituality, and you're one of them. That was fantastic to have you on your show. So yeah, I started interviewing people because I thought there are lots of stories that are worth sharing, and I realized quite early on that I wasn't going to be one of these shapers that has a massive following and that really brings people alive. But what I did think was, anyone that connects with me, that likes the way I am, that sort of trusts me, they might start to engage a bit. And so with astrology, I've tried to put clues in, but not say anything out loud, because I know that when I say things out loud, I get a lot of pushback. I'm not afraid of pushback so much, but I don't want to make people wrong. That's the big thing, is where I felt like I've been made wrong for the last few years by people that I've really trusted. I realized that just sounding the horn and being really loud and proud about things is just making other people wrong. And nobody ever really, well, maybe some people will be made wrong and then suddenly change their minds, but very few people do. I know if someone makes me wrong, I want to prove them. All we do is we embed down, don't we? We entrenched in our views. So what I've tried to do is just sow seeds to encourage open-mindedness. And I recorded a few hypnotherapy messages on, like, I do not consent was the title of one of them. But it wasn't about not consenting, but it was about feeling like how you could not consent in an etheric way, how you could put up a force field, or how you could feel empowered. So I tried to do that, and it's really helped my business, actually, funnily enough. I thought at the start of it, I contacted all my clients and I said, I think money might get a bit tight with all these lockdowns and stuff. So I understand if you want to leave me, come back when you're ready. And actually what happened was more people wanted me to work with them because it was a time of confusion. So that's been great. That's helped me, actually. It's also helped me as a homeschooler, because I haven't felt so readily pushed back. And I'm kind of, it's almost given me a few more reasons why I might not trust our kids being in a mainstream place.
Yeah, no, it's validated your choices, I guess.
Yeah, it has. I mean, it helped me to be like more naturally weird, I guess.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get that. It's like suddenly I felt with COVID, because I've always been a bit kooky, like I've always been a bit different, but I had a very structured professional job.
Yeah, you did.
So I had very much work Jenny that was very, and then home Jenny was quite different. Yeah. And what I found during this process is that people, if you just tell people something, they never really absorb it and understand it and deal with it. But if someone lives through it and you can help guide them, then they learn for themselves and they work out their own blocks that they need to. And we've all got different blocks for sure. I mean, I know that the whole COVID thing definitely triggered my shadow of trust and being lied to. Definitely. It was a big shake, like, you know, you have to deal with this, Jenny. Where does it come from? And I know where it comes from. But I think there are a lot of people looking for guidance, and you know, your astrology is something that I have explored a lot to do with you, because I have an access to somebody that I relate with and that I can easily understand your message. There are some astrologers that I listen to that I don't really understand what they're saying, but I understand you explain things amazingly well. And you've also helped me personally, obviously, with looking at my charts, and it doesn't give you answers as such, does it? It just helps you with guidance and a path, and also kind of explains things a little bit, you know, like where your sensitive parts are and all of that kind of thing. I mean, I astrology is definitely something I've always been interested in it. And I had my tarot cards read many times, like from quite a young age. And I believed in meditation and all of that kind of thing, but I never really practiced it and I never really felt it. But now I do. I feel it now. I feel I know what I need to do. I feel that, you know, if I get a bit stressed, the first thing I do is kick off my shoes and go outside and just try and breathe with the wind or with the sun, and just try and center myself. But definitely, like, grounding activities really helped me, especially when I was kind of going through a bit of a Kundalini awakening at the same time. So everything was quite chaotic and high energy. So grounding activities, being in nature, eating well, you know, and this is the battle, I think. Our preconditioning, our subconscious, our programming.
Yeah, you are really, really right. There's so much I want to pull up on there, because I haven't actually mentioned, you know, about meeting my husband, Carl, who you know, and also the kids. I mean, Carl has never really been an insider, and has always been an outsider, but has found his own way of being outside of things. And he is very much a follower of the way of no thinking. So when this came up, we went through quite a few ups and downs, because I was like, but this is not fair. Lots of people don't know about what's going on. They need to be alerted. And he's like, hang on a sec. Everything is going in the way that it needs to. It's not our business. You know, and you're being caught in an equal and opposite mind trap. You know, the way of no thinking is really the way. And I fought him a lot on this, and I fought quite a few people who I'm very lucky to know quite a few people who are kind of beyond thoughts in many ways. And it's also very easy to accuse them of bypassing. And so I've been in this place of, am I bypassing or am I facing things? And how does it work? And I can only just follow my intuition. And I think sometimes I need to work on things and face things as they are. And then other times I need to recognize that maybe some people's roles here are to burn bright and fade away very quickly. And for other people, they're here to just observe. You know, there's lots of different roles. And so I don't know, I've been trying to cope, but when it all gets a bit confusing, Carl and I, we wrap our kids up in love, and we get up, we do our work, and then we bundle them in the car and go to the beach or go to a park. We live very simply, and the COVID thing just helped us live even more simply. And in terms of our work, we try to, both of us in our businesses, we're about helping people feel at home. So he helps people feel at home as an expat in a new country, and I help people feel at home in themselves. That's my real thing. And one of the things that my business has helped in, I've got people all around the world. And so one of the things that gave me a lot of peace is that I've got people from all walks of life, all different countries, all different political persuasions, doctors, police, army people, all sorts of clients. And I check in with them. They trust me. And so throughout this whole thing, I've been saying, so what's going on in your life? Like, what's going on around you? Are things locked down? And, you know, what have you noticed? And, you know, we've had these conversations. So I might not be reaching thousands and thousands of people, but I'm having intimate conversations with, you know, a few dozen people on a monthly basis around the world, hearing what's going on. And then I'm able to share other people's stories, you know, in confidence. And that's been really helpful to see that it's not as we hear it is.
Well, I think you've picked up a really important point there. So you've got these huge accounts that are spreading information to thousands, hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
But I think what you're doing is probably more valuable, because that person's able to shake their sense of self and learn from it, heal, and then help others. But if it's just information that people are absorbing, they're not being challenged to look inside, then no change really happens. It's just noise, isn't it? It's just noise. And, you know, might just be one person that you help, but that person pays it forward, and then they help other people. And it's like it spreads, doesn't it, over time. And I found also, like you, is that I suddenly had clients from all over in different places of the world, and it was like a magnetism where people were getting drawn to each other because they had the same underlying energy or beliefs. I don't know exactly what it is. And, you know, those little things that you probably don't think like you're making much of an impact actually probably do in terms of overall energy and the healing of the collective. I do think that is really happening. And there's lots of accounts out there that obviously just want to make money, and they want to sell a product, or they want to sell whatever it is. And then there's other people that just seem to be selflessly still banging the drum, still keeping people lifted up, even if at times we felt like we were on our knees, because there were some days where I didn't know if I wanted to even be here anymore with all of this madness. And, you know, I think that is definitely kind of our role, is that we've come into this now as our role. And like you say, we might not be helping hundreds of thousands of people, but even the little things make a difference, right? It's
well, I also think there's a lot of jobs coming up, and crikey, you know, I can see a lot of change that we're going through using astrology. You did ask me about that, and I can see different pathways evolving, and I actually think are like bifurcated. You know, I think there are going to be people that do choose to live in 15-minute cities, and I don't think the powers that be, or the powers that shouldn't be, as I prefer to call them, I don't think they're going to be able to capture everyone. They'll do their best, but I don't think they're going to be able to rule over everything. Like when there's a world war, there are pockets of people that are untouched, but they tell a good story, you know. So I think there are going to be people who call out for that as an option, who really believe in climate, and who really believe this, that, and the other, that are going to be really grateful for the little crumbs that they're given of like desiccated insects. And then there's going to be people that are creating really wholesome lives on planet Earth in small communities. And I don't think our time is here yet. You know, we were born for this time, Jenny, for sure. And I suspect, you know, us raising our children in the way we're raising our children, that's a big part of it. I mean, I'm not going to be, you know, I might be around for another, who knows? I don't know how long I'll be around
50 years. Let's say 50 years.
I'm going to live to be almost 100. But, you know, my kids are going to live. And I think it's really important that our kids can get a feel for who we are, and that what seems normal isn't necessarily right. So, you know, and I can see that, you know, we may be part of the cleanup crew who are here to help people come to terms with the fact that they've been gaslit. I mean, a lot of the clients I'm getting at the moment are people who have had gaslighting and abuse in their lives. And I don't really feel like I've had lots of abuse. I may have felt it, because I like feel a lot of things as an empath, but I'm dealing with a lot of people that have worked with abuse. And so I think, what is this? What's best? You know, why is all this coming up right now? Probably because I'm going to be helping more people come to terms with the mind effects of being lied to all their lives.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
You know, like now when I get a shock and I hear something about something I've taken as truth, right from word go, and I hear that maybe that was just a lie, I'm not even remotely surprised anymore. But I remember thinking, oh, maybe viruses don't exist, or maybe this doesn't exist, or maybe that doesn't exist, and being really, really shocked. But now you could probably say, this is all a computer simulation, and I'll go, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. yeah. I'm exactly that. I've always been quite open-minded to lots of different theories, and if something resonates, then I'd jump on that. But I think it's really interesting the way in which this has triggered lots of people, and I think it's triggered people's own stories and a lot of childhood stuff. I don't know if you're finding this, but I'm finding with people I'm in contact with and clients is that when they start this kind of journey and processing, is that there's always a lot of childhood stuff there, even if it's not particularly unpleasant. There's, I hear from people that were raised in a very religious, background, for instance. I mean, my mum was raised Roman Catholic, and every day at school she used to have to batter her chest and say mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. I mean, she lives with guilt all the time. She still finds it very difficult. She feels guilty about everything, and she has no reason to feel guilty, but it's so ingrained in her that every day she had to do this. It's just awful. But it wasn't particularly unpleasant. Like, you wouldn't say that it was abusive, or maybe it probably is, but it wasn't but it wasn't that she probably didn't feel that at the time. I don't know, but there's a lot of undoing of the pre-programming that we get as children. Definitely.
Guilt is the gift that keeps on giving. There are guilt throwers and guilt catchers, and we work together like a hand in a glove, and that's awful. I mean, what was your first word that you learnt in Portuguese? Mine was sorry. Which is total, that's the epitome of the English language. I was putting some what are they called, the words that you're saying, what are they called?
Mea culpa.
No, when you've done a video and you put the words up that come up as you're talking.
Oh, the subtitles.
Yeah. So I was working through some subtitles, and I checked English language rather than US English, and it heard me when I said so. It thought I was saying sorry. There you go. That's the English thing. Guilt is absolutely implied in the English language, I think.
Oh, definitely. There's a really good show by a comedian. I can't remember what his name is, but he's German, but he's lived in England for a long time. He's been on Have I Got News for You and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he did a sketch where he was pretending to be English, and he was literally walking up to people and like banging into them and then saying, oh, sorry. And then he was standing in front of the escalator so people could go past, and he was apologizing for stuff. And it was just like this whole sketch of how English people say sorry all the time. We have a deep inbuilt sense of guilt, I think, as English.
Yeah.
And probably that's a lot to do with the colonization of other countries, and they haven't had such good history, have they, really, the English, I guess.
I have no idea what it is. I really don't. But the word sorry is a massive one, isn't it? I'd like to share a little story with you, if I may.
Yes.
Because with all this stuff going on, and with me getting angry every now and again, thinking that's not true, I know that's not true, because I can feel it in the core of my being, that message on MSM, it's not true, and I want to throw a boot at the TV or something. We all have those feelings, right? Yeah. I'm feeling like I need to bang the drum, I need everyone to know this is a lie, and like putting something on Facebook and then clicking edit and then rewriting it, and then clicking edit for 20 minutes and then deleting your post. I'm sure you do that as well.
I've done it many times.
Yes, I had a go just a couple of days ago and took the thing off in the end. So there's all these kind of confusions, and I think that there's gaslighting and censorship, which is a really, really horrible trick to separate people. But right before this whole thing erupted, I'd just given birth to my last child, and so he was about 3 months old. I went to sleep one night and had an experience that feels like the most real experience of my life. And in my dream, I I felt myself going underground into like this beautiful hotel, and I looked around, and these walls were like nothing I'd ever seen before. They were like glistening, they were beautiful, and I thought, I want to see these better. And I put my hand up to find a light switch, and all of a sudden it was illuminated. There was this beautiful infinity pool with a lady like bathing in it, enjoying it, and it was shaped like a figure of 8. It was an infinity pool in the shape of the infinity.
Nice. I want one of those.
Yeah, I'm thinking like double 8s in my head. My dream space. And then I walked around the corner, and it became even more beautiful. And I saw this like beautiful staircase. You know those big staircases that turn and then turn again? And so at the first turn, there was this really gorgeous big window, and I could see like the stars behind it. And so I said, oh my God, I want to go up the stairs. And all of a sudden the room was full of my ancestors and loads of people I didn't know, but it was full. I had this like feeling of energy. In fact, the first time I did any kind of mediumship, I felt the room full of people around me. People I'd known from years ago, completely healthy, not remotely blemished or missing a leg or something, you know, like in their perfect health.
In their prime.
Yeah. And so I had this feeling that I was absolutely supported. And then all of a sudden I felt myself going up the stairs. And you know, like when you're opening a bottle of carbonated soda or water, the bubbles start coming up slowly first, and then they start going faster and faster and faster and faster. That's what it felt like. So I went up one step, and I felt my body just like glide up it, and then it started as if it was accelerating of its own speed. And then I started to feel this kind of fizzy orgasm all over my body. And I realized that my body was dissolving, almost like you peel a banana and you like unzip it, and all of a sudden your body's free. There was no pain at all. And I shot through this window without breaking it. And I was in space. Now, that's another thing. I don't actually know if I believe in space anymore, but it didn't matter. But I had the illusion of space.
Yeah.
And at some level, I believe that we have the whole of space in our uterus, which is one of my realizations with every birth. It's like it's a portal to another world. But anyway, that's another story. But I felt myself rushing up, and I just felt this peace. And my body was no more. And I couldn't tell you when my spirit started and ended. It was like it filled the whole plane of wherever I was. And I had this very distinct sense. And I said to myself, oh my God, I'm going to know everything. I'm going to meet my source. And it was such a strong feeling. And I just felt so excited. There was no pain, only absolute incredible joy and awareness. And I was zooming, like getting closer and closer, just feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to know what this whole life is about. And then this other voice came in. It was like, it's not your time. And boom, there I was back in my bed.
Wow.
With my baby nuzzling in and having some milk. But I felt like it was the most real experience of my life, realer than me sat here looking at you on a camera screen.
Yeah.
Felt so real. And it felt like the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. And yet it wasn't my time, and I knew it wasn't. But I really feel like I could have actually died in that moment.
Had you been sick or anything? No, you hadn't been sick.
No, I wasn't totally sick. I think, you know, when you're first breastfeeding a child, your baby, you just like full of great hormones. I used to feel like I was floating out of my body. I think I used to have out of body experiences, but I felt like that was an out of body experience that I had the choice that I could have actually left in that moment.
Okay.
I really feel that.
Yeah.
And when I came back, I just knew that it was my choice to be here for my kids and for my husband, and it wasn't my time. But the feeling that I had that like we really know nothing and we are connected to everything. And I felt like the world was revealing itself in every little microsecond of that experience. All I felt was gratitude, really.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know how it all fits together, Jenny. I really don't. And I know I have sides, but ultimately, I do believe there is a massive force of love behind everything. And even people playing some of the most despicable parts here, you know, you can't believe that everything is made of love if they're not of it at the start. Like if there is, I don't know how to explain it, but if there is this like field of love or field of energy that goes into a polarity to try and experience itself, it will create good and bad. Like, would bad ever want to experience itself from a polarity of good and bad? I don't know, but there is something behind the good and the bad.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I totally agree with that.
And I think whatever is behind that is what unites everyone.
Yes, definitely. And I definitely think that the overall push to have people kept in fear and shame and guilt and all of those things is because, and we talked about this a little bit again yesterday, which was, I strongly believe that we are entering what we probably have called in history before as an enlightenment period.
Yeah.
And during the enlightenment period, there seems to be a lot more discussion about philosophy and music advances and all of these different things, and things are created, and it feels very right-brained, feminine, and all of that. And I do feel like we are entering, or we've entered that phase. Maybe we haven't entered it fully yet. Maybe we're just right at the very start. And I do believe that in the future there will be a better world, but I do think that there is going to be a big crash and burn first. And you know, like in the Bible, I suppose, about helping your neighbor and all of those kind of things, all of those very basic kind of guidelines for living will become more important again. So at the moment it's become important for people to have the new car and the mortgage and the dog that's Instagrammable and all of those things. That's what's important to people. But they're very much operating out of ego, aren't they? Yeah. And I think if we can try and bring it back to, like you were saying, as from a love-centered perspective, that the world will be a much better place. And it's interesting what you said about your experience. Have you, I'm sure you have, because I know you've spoken with Jeff quite a lot, Granville, but have you looked at the Jill Bolt Taylor stuff when she's talking about being in her right brain? Maybe in that moment you were totally in your right brain, and you were in that, and you were in that in-between stage of sleep. Yeah. And you were kind of conscious, but not conscious. You were astral traveling, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't my normal waking state, put it that way. It was completely altered, completely expanded. And for weeks after, I was still having reactions going, oh my God, and crying and just feeling gratitude that I'm here.
It's amazing, isn't it? I have a friend here that she's also an astrologer. She's Portuguese, and she said that the first time she went to a mass meditation, she said she was in another place, like completely. She was traveling, and it was, from what I understand, kind of scientifically, is that everybody in that space was on the same frequency. They were all vibing out of kind of gratitude and love. And the experience that collectively and individually they had was mind-blowing, and kind of a psychedelic experience without having to use psychedelics.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because when I was living in Bali, actually, around the time I met Rick and had that kind of, oh my God, what's going on? I also used to sing in a kirtan group. You know, so I used to go to this kirtan, sing a song once or twice a week, and there were moments where it would start almost feeling like there was a bit of pain in my body, like I can't do this because it's going to feel so good that it almost hurts. It feels so good. And then I wouldn't remember where I was. And I used to be like on my moped, traveling around Bali, going up to see different people and stuff while singing mantra. And there were times when I would just forget like the start of a journey.
Where you were,
And I was off my head completely on just singing and vibration. It's really transforming.
I hope we see, I think there is already, because just even locally, you know, I'm seeing people advertising gong therapy and sound therapy, even just, you know, just locally. This has been a bit of a magnet though, hasn't it, for alternative kind of practitioners, this area. I don't know why that is. I think there is definitely some significance to where we live.
It's funny, I know two astrologers, one in the UK and one in the US, that are both trying to move over at the moment to Portugal. It's a bit of a nexus point, and this point in particular. Place.
I don't know why, because obviously they have a deep history with Fatima, and then with, you know, they found that cosmic egg here. Have you ever seen that cosmic egg? I think it's in Evora, but it's a very old stone egg that's got a pattern around the side that looks like the DNA helix.
Oh wow.
And then there was I'll send you it. It's very interesting. And then there's lots of there's a very strong sense of Mary here, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, it's funny actually, because our middle child is called Minnie, but Minnie is actually it's a version of Mary. Weirdly, I didn't realize. I mean, she was born by the sea, and now we live right by the sea. And she was actually just asking me yesterday, where does my name come from, Mummy? Does it mean something to do with the sea? And then I remembered, Mary is the sea.
Yeah, definitely.
The feminine
Mary, the
water.
sea.
I mean,
Yeah.
I just think there are so many mysteries to. I in recent times, I just think I know nothing about the history of the planet, not the human history anyway, the ones that we've been told. I'm very fascinated by theories of Tartaria.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always wondered why some buildings have got massive windows, massive
Indoors.
like
Yeah.
Alcabasa, this beautiful like monastery and cathedral, or not cathedral, but a massive place of worship down the road from both of us. And the scale of it is
Enormous.
Giant, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So there are lots of different things that we just don't know about, and will we ever know? I have no idea, but I do know that I do feel very certain that if and when I do leave whatever this life is, or wake up to find myself in some psych ward and to realize that all of this was a whole dream and I dreamt this conversation with you and you're in the next bed and I'm
well, I think that probably has happened before, hasn't it? In previous history, where all those big asylums were created and then they sent loads of orphans overseas. Yeah. I think they locked up free thinkers, sent their children overseas, and then they've encapsulated those children in kind of lifelong trauma, so they won't ever kind of exist like their parents did. And in the meantime, they killed loads of free thinkers.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, it could be argued, like when you look at mud floods and things like that, that maybe our civilization is kind of changed or altered every couple of hundred years.
Reset.
And, resets. So who knows what's going on? I don't know, but I just think the only thing I do know is that I want to live as consciously as possible, live in love, and if I'm aware that I'm being triggered, to own it, to see where it's come from. It's been a massive time of change for me and concession. I realize there's lots of habits that I've got and belief systems that I need to let go of. So yeah, it's been good and painful.
Well, I definitely see a collective healing and an individual healing happening too. And like you, I've been able to, it's probably been more in the last 18 months, is that when I feel a particular negative emotion, particularly, is that I try and understand where that's come from. And that's become a lot easier as I've gone through the process. And I notice that I'm getting less and less triggered by certain things than I might have done before. And whether that's because of my individual kind of history or COVID happening or both, I'm not really sure. I think it's a combination of both. And what people need to do, I think, is accept that this process can be quite ugly and painful and not very pleasant. And people, what I see happening is that they get these moments of insight into their self. They either project it back onto somebody else and it's not theirs, or they try to start to think about it, but it becomes too painful, so they block it out and they engage in behaviors that kind of distract them or that feed their neurotransmitters, and then until the next time it happens again. And it might not happen again for another 3 years, but they haven't healed from that because they're choosing to ignore it. So I guess my greatest piece of advice for anybody listening is that accept your flaws, accept your triggers and your shadows, and try not to hold blame on anybody, because you're the one that's accepting to respond into a certain way. And people have some horrible things happen to them, and I'm not saying that you should just forget it, but that we are in the now. We can't be living in the past and the future all the time, because nothing happens there. What happens is what's happening now, right? It's being in the conscious moment and trying to quieten the noise, clean your receptacle so that you're open to receive those messages that come in, and then go from there, really. But look, we're almost up to...
It's really beautiful. Sorry, can I just share? I know we're coming to the end. Can I just share?
Yes.
Just because what you said about the now, I was having a conversation with Rick just last week, and he was talking about the past and the future, and he said that's where the ego lives.
Yeah.
When you are fully in the now, you're not in your ego.
And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. So like if you're in the past, it's because your ego is connecting you to something that's happened in the past. And if you're in the future, it's because you're striving for something which is very egoic. But when you're in the now, you're in your full senses. You know, when you were talking about connecting in with the ocean spray, or I can't remember your exact words, like the sunshine as it comes down in your body and feeling it. That's when you're in the now.
Yeah, most definitely. And for sure, what they've been doing over the last few years, either by design or not, is to keep people thinking about the past or the future and stopping people from being in that moment, because it seems to me that we kind of celestially, we're having a bit of help at the moment to bring this to the forefront. So there is a healing process that's going on. That's what it appears to be to me. I mean, from what I see around me, and I'm seeing this in lots of different people. It's not just people that are spiritually minded or that have had a background in spirituality or anything like that. I'm seeing this process happen with lots of people around me. And it, like I said, it can be quite ugly, and we have to kind of find ways in which we manage and deal with that.
Yeah.
And we all deal with it in different ways, but owning it, definitely.
Yeah. In that last sentiment of owning it, what I realized over the last few years, I've had a massive judgments going on inside me about people that aren't waking up and people that are doing nasty, horrible stuff to other people knowingly. And also I've had thoughts about people who are doing it unknowingly. So I've had a load of judgments. And what I didn't really fully get to the truth of until quite recently, or the truth as I see it, is that when you're judging people in your head, you're saying, oh, look at you, you're this, you're that, you're the other. But of course, your unconscious mind only hears the words you're saying, doesn't hear the you. So every time I was saying asleep, mean, cruel, all of these thoughts I was having about people that were actively perpetrating stuff on other people, or look, you're ill, or this, that, and the other. I couldn't work out why for the last 3 years I've ballooned in weight, and actually my energy levels have gone. Well, it's because I've been in such a mass of like judgments about what has been going on in the world and wanting to put it right, and then also judging me for not having any influence. And so what I realized was I need to just keep telling myself how good I am, how healthy I am, how beautiful I am, how whatever is useful. And of course, we're not very good at saying that to ourselves. And so I found an even easier way of doing it. I go into my garden and I talk to all my plants every day.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Say, look at you. Oh, you've got a traveling dog there. You've got a space dog behind you.
It's the puppy.
He's like, oh, he's lovely. In fact, I'll start, like, I'll be saying to that puppy, you're amazing. You're coming from the light. You're coming. But I say to my plants, look how strong you are.
Yeah.
You are absolutely yourself. You are completely in resonance with who you are. You know everything that you need to know to survive and thrive. And then I add it to my pets. We got a little baby kitten yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Oh, you're a miracle. You're so bright. You're so shiny. I look at my kids. And so now I'm spending my time appreciating everyone, because A, it feels good to do that. But B, every time you say you to somebody, your unconscious mind hears that you're saying it to yourself.
Yes. And that's more powerful than anything, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
The way in which, even if, like you say, you're projecting that about others, the resonance of that is in your body, right?
Yeah.
So when we're picking faults in everybody else or everything else, I like to think, I fully agree with you there, and I'm going to start definitely talking to my plants. I talk to my chickens a lot, and I talk to the dogs and the kids. Yeah. I'm even going to say, when I get in my battered old car, aren't you amazing? You've done really well today, even though you've got another nail in your tire, because, you know, building work. No, so I'll do that too. Is that all of us are kind of unhealed, and I don't believe that I've ever really met a truly 100% balanced, healed person. They either haven't done the work, or they haven't recognized, and they're not really, it just looks like they are. I don't know. Have you ever met a really 100% true, balanced, healed person?
I thought I might have done. But I think when people can't reflect on the fact that maybe they're not completely healed, You know, when they think it's all done, that's when I start to smell a rat, because I have noticed in people that say they are, sometimes they can have a nasty side that comes out again.
Yeah.
I really think the people who are most unhinged, funnily enough, are the ones that have done most of the work, because they're still, yes, they can find peace and be in peace, but they are, they understand that they might not know it all. I'm very a little bit curious as to people who get to a stage where they feel like they know it all. I mean, in that dream state I was in, I did feel like I was going to know it all, or was connected to everything. And I was just like waiting for it all to just drop in.
But nobody can be in that state 100% of the time, can they? Because
I don't think so. I don't think it goes. I don't think like being human and being infinite is something that's mutually exclusive. At some point it is, like, you know, we are made of stardust or whatever we want to say, like we are a living being, we are part of the light, but our bodies are here to perceive. We process everything. So stuff comes into our eyes, we process it. We hear stuff, we eat and drink stuff, it comes out altered. We breathe stuff, we change it, it comes out as a different gas. So everything that comes into us gets changed. Nothing stays pure. We're always processing. So, you know, I think we can connect into it, but can we be it 24/7 for the rest of our lives? I don't know.
I don't know if we can, living in the kind of society that we live in, because you know, so we can, I'm pretty laid back most of the time, but there are some things that really wind me up, like being in a queue. And it will instantly put me into my subconscious of I hate queuing. I know that the British are supposed to be very good at queuing.
When people, I mean, they love queues here in Portugal, and they give people the time of day to have a little chit chat as well, which might be really annoying for you sometimes.
Well, it is if you've got to, you know, you've got to be somewhere, because you've got to live by the clock. But the one thing I wanted to kind of just pick up on when we were saying about other people is that even the people that are doing terribly horrible things with, let's say, for example, with the whole COVID thing. Yeah. My sense that those people they might be consciously doing it, or they might be subconsciously doing it. We don't know. But that there is probably things in their history that they need to also deal with, to heal from, to be able to not be doing that anymore. Like I think that people that do bad things, they have some blockage, or they have something in their past that means that they're acting in that certain way. They're unhealed. It's like they say that unhealed people hurt people hurt other people, right? So this kind of, it sounds a bit woo-woo and a bit fluffy, that everybody just kind of needs to collectively heal, and then maybe on the end of it we'll have a much different planet. I don't know if that's really going to actually happen, if there's going to be people that are just going to leave this wherever we are, this plane. They're going to leave this plane without being able to, maybe it's too much. It's a bit like the history of me with my builder. So he was obviously doing very bad things. He obviously was behaving in a terribly bad way, and he has damaged a lot of people's lives. And it's almost like he couldn't come back from that, and the only other option was that he was going to die, and he died very young. You know, maybe that behavior, that kind of whatever he was doing, made him sick, and he wasn't ever going to reverse what he was doing. He was going to continue on that path, and destiny took it and karma took it, that, you know, he wasn't going to be here anymore. I don't know.
Well, you've just raised a couple of really interesting, we're not going to finish this conversation, are we? And I'm fine, I took my diary earlier, that's fine. But in reference to your builder, I think illness is a way out for a lot of people. So it's interesting that in modern times people tend to have long, slow, lingering deaths, as opposed to, although we were talking about sudden deaths earlier, I think for a lot of people they're not quite ready. You know, like things like dementia, you know, people don't have faith that there's like everlasting light or life. You know, they feel like it's this. And I also think people who get sort of dementia and some of these longer illnesses, it kind of helps them out. Like they do their lives and they sometimes get caught in a corner. And like, I think as you get older and older and older and older, and you commit more and more and more to one path, it becomes really hard to get out of it. And then at some point you realize you're in a corner with your back to the wall and there's nowhere to go. And then all of a sudden you get a sickness, or the sicknesses start coming in as you're getting closer to the corner. Rick, he says he had training in Scientology at one point in his life, and one of the lessons that he shared with me, I think, was that when you stop changing, you start dying. Like when you stop growing or changing, you stop dying. And I look at my plants and I notice that plants go through their natural life cycle, and then as they're starting to sicken or die, I say sicken, I mean not sicken, they just come to the end of their life cycle. There's no bad about sickening, it's just what happens. The plants get rigid, they start to dry out, they can't move. And that's what happens with these old people, like that get really, and it's not just old people, lots of young people get rigid. And so I think like one of the secrets to a long life is to keep flexibility and to, you know, always be ready to move in different directions so you don't get penned into that corner. But in terms of you were asking about like the nature of karma or people doing bad things. I spoke to 2 enlightened people, or people who are fully awakened, and I was talking to them in terms of, I can't believe these evil people or whatever, and they said, well, I'm connected to every lifetime that I've ever been here and every lifetime that I will, you know, they had this sense of infinity, and in that sense of infinity you can only carry that sense of infinity if you can also have all of your good and also all of your bad. And so like one of these people I was chatting to, she said, I remember, or I can be in that moment where I am a warrior on a horse, feeling gleeful and excited with bloodlust, about to chop somebody's head off. That was a memory for her, and in that memory it felt like the most magnificent thing. And one of the things about her level of complete access to everything is that you have to accept all the darkness as part of your shadow, even that awful stuff. And so, yeah, whilst I've been judging people for maybe aiding and abetting in death, in murder, in definitely making people sick, or trafficking, or any number
Awful. Yeah.
horrible things, I realized that it's quite possible that I may have been doing some of this stuff in the past. And the secret is I think is not to judge yourself as all those acts, and just see it as information. You know, obviously I don't want anything to do with any of that kind of stuff. I'm pledging in this lifetime that I'm not involved in anything that is deliberately hurting or undermining or abusing other people. And if ever I feel I am, I'll hold myself accountable to it and really investigate it. Can I blame myself for stuff I may have done in the past? I don't even know if I believe in karma or past lives or future lives. I really don't know. My nature of reality is anything is possible.
Yeah.
I do recognize that when I'm holding a position of I'm judging you as awful, and me as good, it hurts me more because I'm not integrated. And so I've been accepting that maybe my behavior can be a bit shitty as well. and forgiving myself for it.
Yeah, definitely.
So
for sure. You can't, I don't think you could be 100% living in that purity all the time. Life's just not like that, is it? And you need that balance, and like you say, the bad and the good, and the yin and the yang, and the masculine and the feminine. Without one you don't have the other.
Yeah.
And without the dark there would be no light, and without the light there'd be no dark, right? Just be.
Yeah. And in the yin yang sign there is a little bit of light in all the darkness, and a little bit of darkness in all the light.
Yeah.
And so in my life journey, yeah, I've always associated with the light and always felt like, oh, I'm an angel come to earth, or whatever I've thought about myself. I don't fit in here, I'm too good to be here. But I don't know. I denied any kind of wrongdoing in my life, but in the last couple of years I realized, you know, maybe I am in that game as well. And it's not a nice thing to face, that you might actually be abusive, or, you know, that maybe you haven't come from the light or whatever, because it's just the worst thing you could ever think about yourself, is that you might be part of something. But like, if we are all connected energy, then by default we are also the dark and also the light simultaneously. And so what I try to do, as hard as it is try to love it and welcome it in.
Yeah, it's life, I suppose, isn't it? It's like we can focus on trying to make the world a better place. But even in nature, there is things that happen that we perceive to be bad. You know, why are there animals that are carnivores and that go out and hunt other animals when most species could probably survive with a plant-based diet? Like, why do we have that? Why do we eat meat? Why do we? I mean, I'm not a vegetarian. I tried vegetarianism for a very short time and then caved because of a bacon sandwich. But that's one thing that doesn't sit quite right with me, is that I eat animals that have probably, I tried to source them ethically, and I tried to get them from places where they've been reared outdoors and they've not been given loads of shit. And I tried to do that, but my consumption of that piece of meat has contributed to that animal being sacrificed so that I can eat. And but for health wise, I know that I function better when I eat meat. So it's a big conflict. Like, is that partly evil? Vegans and animal welfare supporters will probably say that is.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I've tried veganism 3 times and was vegetarian for quite a long time. In all the times when I was more ill, it was when I was a vegan. And I've been mauled by vegans in chat rooms, where I've explained that I had miscarriages when I was vegan, and then when I added meat back in, I had full and easy pregnancies. I know that I am healthier when I have a meat-based diet. And in fact, I've now started to realize that when I have a lot of greens, I get massive bloating. And, people will make you think that, oh, it's because you're not as regular. But actually, I'm wondering if there's a lot of toxins in some of these greens that we have. I noticed that when I was like growing loads of kale and stuff, that when I was gardening, I was getting these skin reactions. Like my eyes swelled up, my hands, I was getting hives and all sorts of things. So I may, maybe some of these things that I felt were right for me to eat are actually really quite problematic. And I've thought about it. And one of my, in fact, just earlier in the shower, I was thinking, if I can eat meat and find my way back to health, eventually I'd just like to eat light, like a breatharian. I've interviewed a couple of breatharians, and they appear to just be these magnificent people in and out of reality, because that would sit so much better with me. But at the same time, we are like spirit in a body. I don't think we're meant to be holier than thou, and I think we have to make good with it. We are of the light, and you could say our body is maybe the darker, like it's
denser through.
It's the male and the female coming together without causing a gender crisis on your show. But it's the marrying of the yin, the yang, the light, the dark. So I have had the same feelings as you, for sure.
Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it? But that's what we're here to try and work out. And I definitely don't feel like I've got it anywhere near worked out. Like you say, I'm always learning. I'm always open to different ideas. There are some things that instinctively I just think, no, that doesn't resonate with me. I'm not going to even go there. I accept that you might have that opinion. That's fine. Carry on with what you're doing. And maybe the answer is the answer why we're here is to survive, and to survive in the best form that we can. And that's it. It's survival. What we're doing is survival. Really.
Well, I think we've had the benefit of forgetting that we're here to thrive and survive, and we've been navel gazing a bit too much and thinking about all sorts of things. Like if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have to get all the food, the drink, the health, and the home sorted. And when we've done that, then we can advance into things like intuition and purpose and things like that. Well, to me, it feels like we've had the sense that we've had the security to go to the intuition and stuff, but actually we might need to be at the bottom of it and just living good lives. And by good, I don't mean like light and dark, or let's focus on the light, but just really natural lives. I mean, animals just live their lives until we deal with them. And we are also not the cow, we are not the cat, we are not the dog, we are not the fish, we are not, like, it's very easy to anthropomorphize all these animals and to say
that's a good word.
It's a long word for me, and I'm not saying they're not living beings, definitely not. And but to say we know what their role on earth is is to say something we don't necessarily know.
Yeah.
I don't know how it all fits together, but I think if you can live consciously and forgive yourself if you think you've made a mistake, ask for forgiveness from the animal you might be eating. I don't know what else you can do, because what do you want to do? Poison yourself? If you know you're not well on a vegan diet or on a vegetable, like a vegetarian diet, I don't see that self-love is also punishment. I just don't see that.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think that when we're talking about in terms of diet and how we live our lives, using our intuition, or being able to at least receive and then try and interpret what that intuition means, is so valuable. And it's so much more valuable than any of the knowledge that we actually know from information that we've received, like books we've read or videos we've watched or experiences we've had. The most valuable tool we have, I've come this whole circle now, is our intuition. And the whole kind of purpose of being able to live a life that is easier, because life is hard. Definitely most people I know, or everybody I know, has had struggles at some point. Yeah, we all lose people, we all go through grief. Hopefully we all experience love. A lot of us will experience loss. We all go through the same patterns, don't we, and the same experiences. But that if we are able to clear all the noise, and we're able to center ourselves and connect with whatever it is that's out there, whether it's a higher consciousness or an architect or a creator or it's a simulation or whatever it is, to be able to receive those messages and guide us for our highest good. And I don't know anybody that ever says, I followed my intuition and it was the wrong thing for me. What people do is they hear their intuition and they ignore it, and then it gets really, then problems happen, like something shocking happens. And I have a very strong sense of intuition. My problem is that I don't often listen to it. I hear other people's, I hear the voices of everybody else. No, you can't do that. Why are you doing it like that? You hear the voice of your parents, of your teachers, of the newsreader, of your friend down the road. And I definitely think that navigating through this process helps by tuning into your actual inner voice and what your inner voice is saying, but not everybody else's voice. And from my perspective now, that's kind of going to be a bit more of my focus, is trying to help people be able to, first of all, receive intuition or understand their inner knowing, and then how to deal with that. And then if they don't act on it, how then they deal with what the process happens. So your body is intuitively saying to you, veganism is not for you. You need animal fats to survive. And your intuition is telling you that. If you ignored your intuition, you'd probably end up very, very sick.
I don't think I'd have had children. I mean, I didn't know I was pregnant, but when I met my husband, and obviously we had relations, a short while after, I woke up dreaming of eating sausages. I could taste them in my mouth. I'd been vegetarian for 12 years.
Wow.
And I said, oh, I need sausages. And the night before that, I dreamt that I was a vampire and I needed blood.
Wow.
It was like this lust. And I remember going for a walk and walking past a butcher's, and actually going into the butcher's and taking in a deep breath of the air, the smell of the meat. It was almost like an aphrodisiac to me.
Wow.
And I said to Carl, wow, I need sausages. And he went out and bought me sausages. And I said, I think I might be pregnant. I've never been pregnant before. And sure enough, I was. My body knew exactly what it needed. And it was like, normally, if I'd gone into a butcher's, in fact, I used to work next door to a butcher's when I worked in a greengrocer's, and the smell of blood coming from a butcher's was an absolute turn off. It was horrible. I hated it. And yet, when my body needed it, it knew what to do. And I think you have to have the good grace to do what your body's asking, because you can't be here without your body. It's like you are your spirit. And I think we often persuade our body to do all these things, these ideologies, we get it fixed in our head, but we're not listening to the heart. We're not listening to our bodies. So
definitely. And imagine you'd have ignored that advice because you've got the voice of your best friend who's also vegan in your head going, you can't possibly eat meat. You've been vegetarian for 12 years. Why are you doing that? But you'll need to nourish that baby to be able to be a viable human was far greater than any belief system that you held before about meat. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't eat ethically, because we absolutely should, and those animals should be cared for incredibly well. There's a big difference between an animal that's been raised in pasture and had a happy life to one that's been and then slaughtered, not in a very nice way. Okay, I think that might be a very good place to finish, because my tummy is starting to rumble and I'm getting hungry and I need to eat. So, but it's been lovely to talk to you, Louisa, and what an interesting conversation we just had.
Yeah, we didn't see that coming, did we? It kind of went off in so many different ways.
No, but that's good. I like it like that.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'll get it online soon, and hopefully you can share it too. And hopefully our insights might help people. I don't know if they will.
Can I pop it on my channel as well? With to you. I'd love to.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
We're actually soon. We're just in the process of doing it at the moment, but Bo and I, we're developing the intuition course. So we've done a whole course. It's 50 different chapters. It's quite long. Yeah. And we're just in the process of putting it online now, but it's quite lengthy. So when we do that, hopefully then people can have a bit more of an insight into how to harness your intuition and how to act on it and to live a life that's for your highest good.
Well, I've got a couple of little tips and tricks, which I'm sure you've got in your thing, but if not, I'll whiz them over. But about like just making a choice between two things. Like it's actually the quickest thing to engage, as far as I know, in your intuition, is to choose the next best step. Always choose the next best step, because you could like be like, okay, what I need, but actually the next practical thing is just to take the next best step on which feels right in your body. Is it yes? Is it no? Is it meat or not? Because once you get moving, your conscious mind is always there, but if you're at standstill, it's really hard. So you have to be moving to get your intuition working.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that.
All right. Anyway.
Okay, well, have a nice afternoon. Are you going to the beach today?
No, I'm gonna probably do some work, actually. You've inspired me, because I was starting to think, oh, what's the bloody point of doing all the stuff I do? Never reaches anyone.
Oh, it does. It does.
And I was just like looking at other astrologers yesterday, and I was thinking, fucking hell, how have they got like 80,000 bloody followers? And I was looking up on this thing called socialblade.com, and it works out how much people earn from their channels. I mean, I'm not in it to earn from my channel, but I'm doing it because it feels good. But also it might, like, people come to me because they find me. I'm not expecting to make money from my channels. I just do it for shit and giggles, and also that it might get me clients. But seeing how some people are just seen and others aren't is something I've got to work on. It's one of my biggest things to work on. So I was a bit like, I
think you probably reach more people than you actually think that you do.
Okay.
And the ones that you do reach, you have a very genuine impact on.
Yeah.
You could have 50,000 followers, but they don't really listen and absorb what you're saying. And only 100 of them.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Bless all of us trying to make sense of the world.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can help people anyway. That's the plan, right?
I'm really sure we can. Yeah.
I'm sure we can.
Do my best. I'll always be doing this, I think. However.
Don't give up. You have an amazing audience.
Bless you. All right.
Keep going. Go and get inspired. Just quickly say where people can find you, so they know where to find you.
Oh yeah. Okay, if you want to know where to find me, you can get to me on www.feelgoodastrology.com, or you can go to YouTube. I've got my channel there. It's called Feel Good Astrology. And also, I do have a channel called The Barefoot Broadcast, which I share with my husband, where we interview people, a bit like this interview. In fact, it's where I've interviewed Jenny. Have we got 2 or 3 conversations on there? So yeah, The Barefoot Broadcast, and also Feel Good Astrology.
Okay, thanks so much, Louisa.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.